Bring in show music, please.
Hi, I'm CNBC producer Katie Kramer. Today on Squawk Pod. How are Democrats reacting to the massive attention paid to President Trump and his efforts to radically transform government? Congressman Ritchie Torres weighs in on one of the biggest dramas in his party, the crowded race for New York mayor. Torres is endorsing/drafting Andrew Cuomo, the governor who resigned as a common-sense candidate for the city.
The redevelopment of Moynihan Train Hall is a fact. The redevelopment of LaGuardia Airport is a fact. The redevelopment of Javits Center is a fact.
The Department of Justice is investigating billing practices at United Healthcare, and it's putting the system in the hot seat. Former CEO of the Cleveland Clinic, Dr. Toby Cosgrove, joins us.
I think there's been a lot of good that has come from Medicare Advantage, particularly for patients, but there's also been some abuses.
Plus, the staffing purge and pause as Elon Musk's DOGE tries to make government more efficient, the wisdom in Warren Buffett's massive pile of cash, and a market speed bump in 2025.
With the market at any given time, is a 10 or 12% correction ever just totally out of the question? It really never is.
It is Monday, February 24th. Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Becky by in 3, 2, 1. Cue it, please.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We're live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Becky Quick along with Joe Kernen and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Happy Monday, everybody. Here we go again.
With the wild threesome.
We are.
Back.
And we're back together.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at the U.S. equity futures.
Stocks falling hard to end this shortened trading week as UNH drags down the Dow, tech tumbles, small cap sell off, and soft data spooks investors. That's the scorecard on Wall Street, but winners stay.
You saw on Friday the worst performance for the averages all year. This morning there is quite a bit of bounce back. The Dow futures indicated up by almost 300 points. NASDAQ futures up by 80. The S&P up by close to 30 points. And guys, it's been 35 sessions in a row since you have seen the S&P 500 drop by more than 1% for more than one session in a row. Just this theory that as soon as things sell off, everybody jumps right back in to buy things up. I think there was one point where we were down by about 5%, but that lasted about 6 minutes before everything flooded back in. That sell-off on Friday, the Dow was down by nearly 750 points. The S&P was down by 1.7%. The NASDAQ was down by 2.2%. That capped off the worst week for the Dow since October. But again, you're seeing this big bounce back this morning, and we'll see where that leads. Treasury yields have come under pressure. This has been kind of that flight to safety, as you saw a lot of buyers rushing in. The 10-year at this point well below 4.5%. It's at 4.43. The 2-year's at 4.21. There were all those questions about the consumer on Friday and questions about inflation expectations that were built into some of those things.
450 on Thursday, 750 on Friday. That's 1,200. That's but it's still 2.5%. Has there ever, with the market at any given time, is a 10 or 12% correction ever just totally out of the question? It really never is, I don't think.
And look, if you look at average stocks, they've seen a huge pullback and a huge drop down. The averages themselves have managed to hang in there. And that's the big question for this year, whether that will continue.
But 2 great years. I was thinking about Warren, he's been selling for 9 straight quarters.
Yeah.
It's been 2 great years, but that doesn't mean it wasn't a good time to be selling into all that strength. We will know eventually. A lot of people have said they expect choppiness for the first half of the year. Look, how many times have we mentioned multiples at 22 times earnings? Inflation is definitely something that is front and center again, but consumer confidence is down too. That's not great either. So I'm not. But percentage bearishness was 49%. We mentioned that last week. It was the highest level in like a year or something. So is that good or bad?
And look, people have we're going to talk more about Berkshire Hathaway in just a moment. People have looked at his selling and say, why does he have that much cash? Does he think a crash is coming? In his letter, he didn't say that. People said, it's not that he thinks a crash is coming. But him thinking that stocks are too expensive is the same thing. He's never going to point to a time and say, I think that the stocks are going to drop at this moment in time. He thinks things are too expensive.
He never does things absolutely perfect, but I bet you wish he hadn't sold as much Apple as he sold.
Yeah. It's been up pretty substantially since he started selling.
Probably.
Sins of omission is what he always likes to talk about.
He's getting older. People get more conservative as they get, what Charlie said at 98 he didn't have, before he passed, or 99 he didn't have near the energy he had when he was 96.
I don't know that he's getting more conservative. I feel like he's been that conservative all along. If you looked at what he was doing before the 2001 crash in tech stocks, for years leading up to that, he was very skeptical of the run that had happened. He will tell you he's never going to time things perfectly, but he looks at valuations. And
you counting on any rate cuts this year? Did you think about that in Florida?
I'm not counting on any. Are you?
That's what I mean. No, I'm not counting on any, unless they're for really bad reasons.
I hope we don't get any rate cuts because it would mean that the economy's tanked. In the meantime, Berkshire Hathaway out with its latest quarterly numbers over the weekend. Warren Buffett's firm sold more stocks during the quarter and actually grew its record cash pile to $334 billion. That was a relatively small additional add. I think it was like $10 billion more that they added over the course of that last quarter. In his annual letter, Buffett did not explain why he was amassing more cash, but he did say that posture in no way represented a move away of his love for stocks. He said in his words, Berkshire shareholders can rest assured that we will forever deploy a substantial majority of their money in equities, mostly American equities, although many of these will have international operations of significance. Buffett did signal that he plans to continue to increase ownership in the 5 Japanese trading houses that he began buying nearly 6 years ago. There are the trading houses that has grown steadily over the course of time, and they've been allowed to increase their ownership by all 5 of those Japanese trading houses. But again, very positive on America, very positive on the outlook, long arc of this country, and a big kind of kiss to capitalism in the letter this time around, too.
It's a lot of cash.
It is
a mess. And for March Madness to give away just $1 million, I just don't see why, if he's got that much, that can't go up a little bit.
I think he really wants to give away the $1 million.
How about make it, let's do 10 or 100. Let's do factors of 10.
Let's you and I do.
Well, you know him.
So do you.
And I just checked. I mean, his beloved Blue Jays are doing really well.
Yeah. In fact, I think you get
really
much
good.
more money if they do win, if Creighton wins.
Yeah, I'm sure he does. Did you stay up last night?
No.
For Rutgers? No?
Oh, yeah, I did. I watched Rutgers game.
But you did. 95 points.
Yeah, and
Against a Trojan.
There was a big run by them at the end, by the USC team at the end.
They came
back. So it was a little scary down to the end, but great game.
There were some good games yesterday.
Yeah.
There were some really...
that wasn't that late. Stay up.
St. John's. Patino really is a good coach.
Yes, he is.
Let's talk some politics in Europe, specifically in Germany. Germany's Conservative Party winning the country's general overall election this weekend, defeating a challenge by the far-right Alternative for Germany party. Now, the incumbent Social Democrats finished a distant third. Friedrich Merz is set to become the next chancellor. He will begin talks this week to form a coalition government. He has said he won't form a ruling alliance with the far right, but he may have a difficult time negotiating a lasting partnership with the Social Democratic Party, which swung further to the left during the campaign. Now, the German DAX right now, take a look at where things stand. Just at about now, we're at about 22,439. And of course, that alt-right party had been supported in large part by some folks in the Trump administration, also Elon Musk and others. So we'd been all watching, trying to figure out what was going on. Had that conversation about it with Alex Carr.
They had a 20% showing. 1 in 5 voters came out for it. This was 84% of the possible voters that actually showed up to vote. So a huge outturn in this election. It does put them in a position to be pole position for criticizing this government and kind of trying to make some gains in the next go around.
Right. Immigration is everywhere. Breaking news: Apple announced it's going to work with Foxconn to build a server factory in Texas by 2026 to build artificial intelligence servers. Apple says it will add about 20,000 research and development jobs across the U.S. The company plans to spend $500 billion in the U.S. over the next 4 years. Includes everything from purchases from U.S. suppliers to U.S. filming of TV shows and movies. The company didn't say how much of that $500 billion that it had already been planning to spend, whether how much of that is actually new. And on Saturday, Elon Musk posted on X a demand that government employees summarize their accomplishments for the week, warning that failure to do so would be taken as a resignation. Soon after, the Office of Personnel Management sent an email asking servants for a list of accomplishments, but it didn't include the threat of removal. The deadline is 11:59 p.m. tonight. Several Trump-appointed agency leaders urged federal leaders not to comply with Musk's order. Workers at the Department of Defense, Homeland Security, Education, and Commerce, as well as the FDIC and IRS, were told not to respond pending further guidance. FBI Director Kash Patel sent a memo to his staff, telling them not to respond outside their chain of command. He said the FBI is in charge of all its review processes. And President Trump was largely silent about the order. He posted this SpongeBob meme around noon yesterday. And overnight, Musk posted on X that this was, in his words, basically a check to see if the employee had a pulse and was capable of replying to an email. This mess will get sorted out this week. Lots of people are in for a rude awakening and a strong dose of reality. They don't get it yet, but they will.
In the meantime, the Trump administration is firing 2,000 workers from the U.S. Agency for International Development and putting thousands of others on paid leave as of yesterday. A judge ruled Friday that the White House could proceed with plans to lay off employees and close down operations overseas. The appointees in charge of USAID sent an email to workers yesterday afternoon informing them of the layoffs and the leave. There are exceptions for people that are working on mission-critical programs as well as core leadership.
Separately, late Friday, the FDA began reversing termination notices for some employees who were laid off. Now, the employees who are considered probationary started receiving calls on Friday evening and Saturday morning from the FDA's Human Resources Department. They were informed that they could return to work and would receive computer and network access by today. It's unclear how many of them, of the terminations, will ultimately be reversed. And I saw an interesting article in the Journal today just about all of these court cases where oftentimes the administration will go in, talk to the judge, and the judge will ask relatively basic questions about who's getting fired, how many people are you firing, if they had just started but hadn't really come on, are they still under a probationary period? And more often than not, the lawyers don't have answers, which seems to be frustrating the judges, which may not bode well for the ultimate answers.
Yeah, it's complicated, and we are going to see how this all plays out. Hey, before we go to a break, one thing.
What's
Andrew, congratulations. I don't know when you put this out, but that for 8 years you've been working on this. I saw it over the weekend. You've been working on a book for 8 years.
When it actually happens.
And why did we spend so much time on that? Now you're the false humility. Last week we spent all week talking about it. Now you don't want to talk about it?
No, I said we talk about it when it comes out.
Did you hear my joke?
No.
So he's doing 1929. Right after he said that, I said, well, that's funny. I have a book coming out too. 1928. And mine's coming out in September. His is coming out and then I said like 8 minutes after.
Oh, look at this, an opportunity. Thank you.
Where's mine?
Andrew, I have to say,
don't really have 19.
The idea that you have done this on the sly,
and think about.
You never ask people when they're expecting until it's there and whatever, but I had no clue.
And it's a mini-series in the making. I see it. It's a limited series on Netflix. I see it.
God bless
He's going to be
your lips, hopefully.
Jumping off buildings and stuff.
This is
Flappers,
this
1929.
Like
I mean, there's so much.
Real story of
Yes,
crash.
this is the drama. This is the soap opera of 1920. It's I hope one of the first times you actually see all of the people, the real characters, the equivalent of the Hank Paulsons and Ben Bernankes and all of the actors in the room talking to each other. You actually see what happened in 1920. I think we all had a vague, or at least I had a vague notion of what had happened during that period, but I'd never sort of seen it in that sort of
Someone
in that way.
sent in, there was some type of movie or little series about it, but it was terrible, and it did not do it justice. So it's ripe. It's ripe.
Let's hope that it's not ripe because there's another crash coming.
I say I'm writing a prequel, not a sequel. That's...
Congratulations. I'm very excited.
I can't wait to read it. You don't think it'll work getting out in front of him with 1928? I mean, mine has got everything.
No.
His has it. Okay.
No.
I actually haven't done anything. I've written squat. I talk.
Tease will be next.
Coming up on Squawk Pod, New York Congressman Ritchie Torres. He's endorsing a comeback candidate for New York City Mayor, former Governor Andrew Cuomo. And he's weighing in on the Big Apple's congestion pricing that the White House wants to end.
It's too early to tell, but ultimately, preserving the public transit system should be foremost among the responsibilities of a governor.
This is Squawk Pod.
Up and Andrew, Q.
You're watching Squawk Box on CNBC. I'm Andrew Ross, working along with Joe Kernen and Becky Quick.
New York Congressman Ritchie Torres endorsing Andrew Cuomo to be the New York City's next mayor. Congressman Torres joins us this morning to talk about this and much more. I think that we have pointed out many people are able to have pretty solid comebacks in politics. The further we get removed from, I don't even remember. I remember some of what it was, but I also remember as a governor, he was pretty well thought of in terms of just being, of operations, of being, there's, I think, a little bit of nostalgia for how he was as a governor versus the current governor. Why are you doing it? He's definitely like a centrist in terms of immigration and Israel and other issues like that. Much more centrist than some parts of the Democratic Party right now.
Well, look, Andrew Cuomo is a common sense Democrat who represents.
It's an oxymoron.
Well, no, it's not. Because most Democrats do have common sense. And for me, the two most important virtues in politics are competence and courage. And Andrew Cuomo has the competence to run New York City in a moment of crisis. And he has the courage to stand up to the extremes of American politics, whether it's the far right or the far left. There's a mayoral candidate who openly identifies with the Democratic Socialist of America, which celebrated the mass murder of Jews on October 7th. And so when it comes to confronting political extremism in New York, when it comes to confronting the crisis of crime, we need not a nice guy, but a tough guy like Andrew Cuomo.
Is this an endorsement of Governor Cuomo or an indictment of Mayor Adams, in your view?
Look, it's both. New York City's in crisis. 4 deputy mayors have resigned. The city is less safe than it should be. In the subway system, the murder rate is at the highest level in 25 years. And what we need now more than ever is the kind of stable and strong and steady leadership that Governor Cuomo can provide. And the effectiveness of Andrew Cuomo as an executive need not be taken on faith, right? It is a fact, right? The redevelopment of Moynihan Train Hall is a fact. The redevelopment of LaGuardia Airport is a fact. The redevelopment of Javits Center is a fact. And so we as New Yorkers, every day, we live and see the legacy of Andrew Cuomo as a great builder of New York City.
Can I ask you just about Adams right now?
Sure.
And how you think about him? I have made the comment that our mayor is being held hostage by the White House. It's sort of a remarkable situation because he could be prosecuted at any moment if he does something that this White House doesn't want.
But the congressman is probably in favor of you call it a quid pro quo. The quo that Trump wants from Adams, you want as well, and that's tightening up immigration and crime.
Well, I want a mayor who could govern independently of the far right, and Donald Trump represents the far right. And what I found striking is that Donald Trump made the decision not to pardon Eric Adams or to permanently drop the charges, but only to do so temporarily. And so the fear of a re-indictment keeps Mayor Adams permanently under the thumb of Donald Trump.
I've also made the argument, I think politically, at least in this city, it hurts Adams rather than helps him insofar as the citizenry of the city says to themselves, we can't have somebody who is directly under the thumb of somebody else. But I understand, there's part of me that can rationalize why Adams would accept a deal.
But I'll come back to this. The reason you left the Progressive Caucus was because the far left of your party is soft on immigration, not as pro-Israel as it should be, soft on crime. So the things that Trump is demanding from Mayor Adams are the same things that you want, and the reason that you call it far right. What is immigration far right? Is crime far right? Why are those far right things?
Well, I would argue the attempt to defund Medicaid and the tune of $880 billion
or
is
defunding
excessive.
the police. I don't know.
But I would say the issue is not his cooperation with the Trump administration, which is a policy disagreement. The issue is the quid pro quo. Like that to me is profoundly unethical. And we have a mayor who's lobbying not for the interest of New York,
Are you running for
but
governor?
for his self-preservation.
Are you running for governor?
Considering a run for governor. Yeah.
Considering, and what would you continue to distance yourself from that flank of from the AOC? I don't know, what do you want to call it? From the Progressive Caucus? You blame them for losing the election?
I don't think anyone connects him to the Progressive
Well, no, he already
side.
left, because he left. Yeah, you left the Progressive Caucus, right?
Particularly on the issue of Israel after October 7th, yeah.
Well, I would, that among other things, all right? Immigration or not so much?
Look, for me, no state saw a greater swing toward Donald Trump than New York. And that, to me, is not a coincidence. That's a consequence of failing governance on the part of Kathy Hochul. Like, the majority of New Yorkers feel we're heading in the wrong direction.
Right.
We feel our quality of life, our public safety, our affordability are declining. Our cost of taxes are rising. We're paying more and more for less and less. In 2014, the state budget was $142 billion. Today, the governor proposed a $252 billion budget. There's not a single New Yorker who has seen a $110 billion improvement in the delivery of government services.
I got maybe a complicated one for you, especially if you want to run for governor. What do you think of congestion pricing?
Look, it's a necessity because congestion pricing would generate about $1 billion of revenues, which is a bondable funding stream for a $15 billion capital investment in the MTA. And for me, the preservation of our public transit system is one of the most important responsibilities.
I say complicated because obviously you're going to require votes from folks upstate and in Westchester and Long Island and other places. She's in New Jersey.
Even people who are in the boroughs here who now have to pay a toll and a tax where they never did before. I mean, it feels like it hits pretty hard on the heads of blue-collar workers in particular who have to come into Manhattan for their jobs.
Look, I would never downplay or deny the cost, but the future of our city depends on a fully funded, functioning public transit system. Our public transit system has over $100 billion in capital needs, and I feel it's irresponsible for Donald Trump to create a $15 billion hole in the MTA's capital budget without an alternative that fills the gap.
Do you think it's going to have any economic impact on the city? That's negative? I mean, some people would argue that it could create a negative impact if you feel like there's less people that can get into the city. Other people would argue that if you can create the productivity gains as a result of cars being able to move in and around and actually the public transport system working better, that unto itself should make the city a lot better.
It's hard. It's too early to tell. I mean, we know that there's been, congestion has been radically reduced in the central business district. Emergency times have improved, but, it's too early to tell. But ultimately, preserving the public transit system should be foremost among the responsibilities of a governor.
Why don't you get people who are using it to actually pay instead of jumping over the turnstiles and not paying on the buses?
It's not either or. I think it's all of the above. But I agree, we need to crack down on fare evasion.
Yeah.
Congressman, thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Come on back.
Good to have you in, and you're nearby. Yeah, you could be here. Easily most times, right?
Yeah. Monday mornings on your way to D.C.
Yeah.
What'd you do last week? Can you send me a list of what you were doing last week?
Top 5 things.
Did you get a lot done?
I did. I was in the district.
Okay, go on.
And just advocating.
Top 5
Are you going to have to send an email to Elon or no?
No, because I do not report to
What about
Elon
What about
Musk
your staff?
No. My staff reports to me and I report to the people of the Bronx. So.
All right.
What do you think of these emails?
What do you think he thinks
Elon
of?
Musk is out of control. Look, I'm all for removing fraud, waste, and abuse from the government, but that means applying a scalpel. He's applying a machete. I mean, he's shutting down agencies, even at the cost of violating an act of Congress. So I strongly disapprove of what he's doing.
Okay, come on back. We'll
of course.
debate it more. You bet.
Next on Squawk Pod, waste, fraud, and abuse in the healthcare industry? I'm shocked. A deep dive into the mercurial billing practices of Medicare Advantage and what it means for patient care with the former CEO of the Cleveland Clinic, Dr. Toby Cosgrove. He says there is opportunity to fix a paperwork mess.
The bigger picture is going to be, can we embrace AI to help in a major way reduce the cost of healthcare, improve the quality, democratize knowledge, and get more efficient care to more people? And I think that is the bigger issue that we're dealing with in healthcare right now.
You're listening to Squawk Pod from CNBC. Here's Becky Quick.
Welcome back, everybody. Shares of United Health moving in the pre-market once again today. That comes after serious allegations last Friday that the Department of Justice is investigating the company's billing practices in relation to Medicare Advantage. The stock, if you're looking over the week, was down by 10.5%. According to the Wall Street Journal, at issue is a practice by private insurers like United Health that's called upcoding. That's where the insurer overbills the government and therefore the taxpayer by adding diagnoses to the patient that are designed to trigger additional payments to the insurance company. For insights on this complex issue and possible ramifications for the wider industry, we want to bring in Dr. Toby Cosgrove. He's former CEO and current executive advisor to the Cleveland Clinic. And Toby, it's great to see you here today.
Nice to be here, Mike. Thank you.
This is pretty complicated. You start wondering what it's all about. This was not just UNH that sold off last week, but also companies like Humana and CVS, other insurers. A lot of questions about Medicare Advantage program. What's happening here? What can you tell us?
Well, I think it's really interesting what we've got here. A lot of people, I don't think, understand the origins of it and the differences between just Medicare and Medicare Advantage.
I don't.
It turns out that back in 1965, Kennedy was the guy who brought Medicare around. And at that point, the people that were over 65 didn't have any insurance at all to cover them. Now, 2% of the people in the United States don't have any insurance to cover them. Things went along well, but they were realizing that it was costing a lot of money. And so 30 years later, the Clintons brought around what they called Medicare Advantage. The idea was to improve the quality and to bring the private sector in to make it more efficient than the government could do. Now, several interesting things happened out of that. First of all, there was some efficiencies brought. The number of hospital admissions for Medicare Advantage dropped 50% compared with just straight Medicare. There was a 20% reduction in the number of people going to the emergency room. There was much more wellness brought in, and people flocked to it. In the last decade, the number of people who have Medicare Advantage has gone up, doubled in that amount of time. And now 54% of people over 65 have Medicare Advantage. Now, the reason that they're interested in this is because the co-pays for Medicare Advantage were substantially less for the individual than they were for just straight Medicare. There's bigger co-pays there. But the disadvantage is that it's costing more. It's costing the government more. So what they did is they brought in the government to essentially administrate the Medicare and all the insurance companies.
We brought in the government to take care
of... The government
of...
brought in, I'm sorry.
Okay, the government originally brought in private industry to try and make it more efficient.
Exactly.
And that's where it became more efficient on some places, but then the cost ballooned there too. So what happened?
Exactly. And so what you look at now is that costs about $100 billion more or 30% more than it would if you were in straight Medicare to the government.
Why is that? And what is this practice of upcoding?
And part of that is what has been, people are upcoding. And the risk scores are going up, as you explained at the beginning here. And that is widely used throughout the industry. Some companies more than others. But there has to be a solution to this.
Is it fraud? Like these companies, insurance companies saying, okay, we're going to add these diagnoses on because we get paid more for that, even if you don't have the diagnosis. That sounds like straight out fraud.
Well, I'm not sure you call it straight out fraud, but I think everybody has done it. And it is something that does benefit the insurance companies. And
how is it not straight up fraud? I mean, I'm giving you a diagnosis that you don't have because I'm going to make more money from the government.
Well, maybe you don't have, but maybe you do have and it's not treated. I mean, for example, you might have obesity.
Diabetes. And they argue that a sort of an early diagnosis of all these chronic conditions is exactly what you're trying to do to keep down costs long term. But then you throw in I don't even remember the common one. It was hormonal something or other that you don't even need to test for, and it's very obscure, but it jacks up the rates that they can charge.
It just sounds like a game of whack-a-mole where the insurance company, the government tries to say, okay, we're only going to pay for these things because we think this leads to efficiencies. The insurance companies figure out, okay, here's how we game the system again.
So I think this is an abuse, and the question is really how do you fix it? And it's interesting that MedCap, which is an independent government agency, came along and said, here is the approach that we'll do with this. And we will reduce the amount of upgrading, if you will, of Medicare patients. And we're going to do it in a two-pronged way such that people who are abusing this more will get more of a reduction. People who are using it less
People
will not.
meaning insurance companies, because it's not the patients who are doing the abuse.
Yes, exactly.
So if you are an insurance company that does a lot of this, and maybe this is the department, we still don't know, we're just guessing that the Department of Justice investigation into this will aim to put a chill through the rest of the industry and keep insurance companies from doing this?
Yeah, but I mean, I think you have to have some sort of a way to do it, and I think MedCap has a very approachable, fair way to do it, so that people who are using it a lot are penalized, or companies that are using it a lot are penalized more and reduced more. So I think that there's been a lot of good that has come from Medicare Advantage, particularly for patients. But there's also been some abuses.
Yeah. Dr. Cosgrove, we're almost out of time, which is crazy. Come and explain the most complicated thing we can possibly think of and do it in 6 minutes. But is this something that's fairly common practice among hospitals, among doctors, among insurance companies? I mean, I can think of a few instances myself where, you can't get services, you can't get therapies for certain things unless you have a special diagnosis that maybe doctors give out freely because they understand that's the only way to get the system to pay for the services that are needed.
I frankly don't think that this is common amongst doctors and hospitals that do this.
Just insurance companies.
This is what we're looking at here has brought this to attention is insurance companies.
Do you think that Medicare itself, by definition, because it's it's not, I mean, you said bringing in Medicare Advantage at least puts a profit incentive on, or a private sector concerns on a government program. I mean, it's big, it's bulky, it's, you go over budget and you just tax people more. It by definition is something that is probably ripe for abuse, waste, and fraud.
Yeah, I think that the profit motivation came in here.
And that can backfire,
and that has potential for problems.
But there's also the situation where the government won't pay what it costs to fix people on some issues. And that's part of the problem too.
That's a different issue. That's denials that I think you're talking about here.
No, I mean just pricing in terms of what it costs for the doctor's time, what it costs for the hospital, what it costs for those things.
Well, clearly Medicare and Medicaid pay less than it costs the hospital.
Should Medicare be keeping every 90-year-old alive for another 6 months?
That's an ethical issue and on a personal basis.
Zeke Emanuel.
Right, it's the death penalty.
75. You're out of here.
I hope not.
They're complicated questions.
This is a complicated issue.
Yeah.
But there is a solution for it. There has been good things that have come from it, and I hope it gets remedied.
Who's got to fix it? And can you do it?
Can I do it?
Yeah.
No, I don't.
No interest in going to Washington to fix all this?
It'd be nice if the pharmaceutical industry could fix it.
No, I don't think I'm going to be going to Washington at this stage in my life.
Okay. It'd be nice if
we got to get the right guy in there.
It'd be nice if we had the right pill for everything, wouldn't it? That's why we do not want to un-innovate. But they got to stop advertising constantly and spend the money on innovation. If I hear a Jardiance, if I see one more group of, full-figured people dancing around following each other, what the hell is that? Why do I need to watch that? Why do they have to advertise that? Why can't the doctor just tell them they need it?
Well, I think that the people, the pharmaceutical company clearly recognizes that they can create demand.
It's the wrong way to spend the money.
So you know where I'm on that. We agree, but I thought you'd be in like some kind of free speech land where corporations should be allowed to do whatever they want to spend all the money.
They should be, but they should hear about it from us, that we don't like hearing every song that's ever been written is now in your those worm songs.
It's magic.
But I think there is an issue.
Earworms. Yeah.
Earworms.
Go ahead.
There is an issue here that even $100 billion is, in the greater scheme of almost $5 trillion in healthcare is small potatoes, really. And you have to begin to look at the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is going to be, can we embrace AI to help in a major way reduce the cost of healthcare, improve the quality, democratize knowledge, and get people's and get more efficient care to more people? And I think that is the bigger issue that we're dealing with in healthcare right now.
Agree completely. Dr. Cosgrove, thank you. We really appreciate your time and hope to see you again soon.
My pleasure.
That's Squawk Pod for today. Thank you for starting your week with us here. Squawk Box is hosted by Joe Kernen, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Please tune in weekday mornings on CNBC at 6 Eastern, or get the smartest takes and analysis from our TV show right into your ears when you follow Squawk Pod wherever you get your podcasts. We'll meet you right back here tomorrow.
We are clear. Thanks, guys.